And welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. With me today is John Cameron. And the great thing about doing these things have to do remotely is Richard Fields gets to join us live himself. Welcome, Mr. Richard Fields. Welcome back. Welcome back. All right, Richard, we're going to start off with you today. There's got some something to say about censorship, so I figure it's a good just to start with you on that.
Yeah, it's been a big thing in the news over the last few weeks. So let's do that. Hi, this is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. What a difference a year makes. As late as December of last year, after Trump was elected, but before he was appointed the chair of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr said on X, censorship isn't just about stopping words. When you silence speech, you silence ideas. That's got to end. At the time, he was criticizing Biden-era attempts to end big government censorship partnerships like the Biden administration's strong-arming of media to squelch propagation of any COVID narrative or Hunter Biden laptop narrative that they didn't like. So far, so good. Then he was appointed chair of the FCC. Late-night comedian Jimmy Kimmel made fun of Trump's reaction to the Charlie Kirk assassination. Then Carr said, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct and take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there is going to be additional work for the FCC ahead." Totally analogous to a mafia don waltzing into a bar and telling the owner, "Sure is a nice little business you have here. It would be a shame if it burned down." Amazing how a tiny bit of power or fear of losing it if he didn't do Trump's bidding made him change overnight from a free speech absolutist to a rabid censor. Now, I could easily go down the path of pointing out that both Democrats and Republicans jump at the chance to censor. Of course they do. Who can forget Biden's short-lived government disinformation board under the notorious censor Nina Jankowicz? The larger underlying issue is the fact that the government has the leverage to censor. That leverage is the very existence of the FCC. The FCC got its start in the 1920s as a way to manage the wavelength spectrum used by radio stations. It was later enlarged to include the spectrum used by TV. The idea that the broadcast spectrum was ever owned was ever owned by the public, effectively the government, never made sense. The correct way to treat broadcast spectrum would be to think of it as a property right, with the property, the broadcast spectrum in question, in a given geographic area, awarded to the entrepreneur who first used it. Broadcast licenses have always been de facto property rights. The only limitation to full property rights has been the FCC's periodic regulatory actions, license renewals, the fairness doctrine, and now ham-handed threats to stymie network mergers if the late-night comic whose jokes Trump doesn't like isn't canceled. As we've seen, one of the original justifications for the need for the FCC was spectrum management. Now, with the advent of effectively infinite spectrum available on the internet, that need has literally evaporated. Looks like we have found another letter agency that has outlived its questionable usefulness. Abolish the FCC, along with most of the rest of the three-letter agencies in Washington, D.C., and for that matter, in state houses and the county seats around the country. That's this week's Report from the Fields. I'm Richard Fields. See you again next week.
Hey, thank you, Richard. Thank you. That's always a good perspective to start with, because our first topic here is Google finally admits that they were censoring Americans at the behest of the Biden administration. This is something we've known with from the Twitter files, from just experience, right?
Yeah, they censored us.
Yeah, so it's no surprise to us here that Google was censoring Americans. I guess this comes at a strange time, right? When we now have the new administration. Is this one of those cases, John, where the old boss is the same as the new, or the new boss is the same as the old?
Yeah, you could say that. I think that the more truth that gets out about what happened will bring more pressure on the current administration to not repeat the mistakes of the last one. And again, whoever's in power wants to take power and use power, but um, the right thing to do, and hopefully, somebody will guide them down that path, is to eliminate, like Richard said, get rid of the FCC, open up like X did, formerly Twitter. They got rid of all of their so-called fact checkers and people who were removing questionable content and all the rest of that, and let the market decide what people want to see. And on X now, it's almost instantaneous. Somebody posts some BS, then within seconds somebody has posted some facts that refute it, and some more information, and some places to look. So that's what we need. We need the market to run it, not these government agencies, because they'll always try to punish their enemies and fix their friends, and silence what they don't like and promote what they do like. Just like I think the Biden administration was especially nefarious in it and underhanded in it. At least Trump's, on being obvious in his mafia Don strong arm tactics, so people can see it and fight it. But if it wasn't for Elon buying Twitter, we probably wouldn't have known about any of this stuff. And because there'd be no reason for anybody to come forward, because they don't like Google didn't want to be taken down. And Facebook and Apple and all the rest of the players that were forced to censor people, and they didn't want to stand up and fight because they thought the government would shut them down. So I think this new report that Google put out just adds fuel to the fire to try to burn down this illegal house of government censorship.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, but I think you pointed out something that's very true. The Democrats and the left in general tends to be very sneaky about their censorship. They try to do it in the dark of night and behind closed doors, whereas the Republicans are much more out front about it and do it in broad daylight. They're both doing the wrong thing, but at least the Republicans or the right is obvious about it.
Yeah, and it's much easier to identify. And the left, for some reason, the left always justifies it. Well, everybody for the greater good. I should have the quote memorized by now, because I write it down so often. The welfare of the people is always the alibi of the tyrant, and it has an additional benefit in that the servants of the tyrants have an excuse for their actions. So it's going to happen. We just got to call them, people like us, people like the Free Press, people like Reason, even some of the quote unquote conservative organizations are just saying, stop, just tit for tat isn't what we need here. We need the government to get out of people's way so that they can read what they want, listen to what they want, watch what they want, and say what they want. And that's what the Constitution says anyway. So I'm all for it. Get them out of the way.
Yeah, we need to end as many of these regulatory bodies who, regardless of what their reasoning for starting was, they have morphed into trying to control society. And the solution to speech you don't like is speech that you do. That's always the solution to these kind of things. And it seems obvious to us, but it is what it is. All right, we're going to move on. This one I don't understand. All right, so maybe you guys can help me understand this a little bit. Because pregnant women are now, Trump pointed out that there was some studies showing that Tylenol could be bad for children, and you probably shouldn't take it while you're pregnant. And a bunch of women have taken this, that Trump is blaming women for their child being autistic or some goofy thing. So now there's this video trend on TikTok and whatnot of people posting deliberately overdosing on Tylenol. It's gone literally insane. I don't understand. Well, can we either of you explain this one to me?
Yes. Richard,
You can, because I can't.
So it's anything the Trump derangement syndrome is alive and well. I know that we all know people who are just, bat poop crazy. Anything that Trump could say, I don't know, what could he say? Oxygen is good for you. And immediately, 2 million lunatic left people would deprive themselves of oxygen. There was a meme in one of the publications about it. It was Babylon Bee or something. One of the sarcastic, very enjoyable reads. A lot of their stuff is boring, but some of it is funny. I think it said something like, Trump says you shouldn't drink gasoline because it's bad for you, and 2 million liberals die drinking gasoline. So it's just about that bad. Whatever Trump likes, they hate. Whatever he hates, they like. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't.
Well,
And,
I mean, you have to admit that neither Robert Kennedy nor President Trump are medical professionals, and they probably shouldn't be just willy-nilly giving medical advice, particularly on something as personal as pain control for pregnant women. Just saying. But that being the case, if they do say something, I guess that's their First Amendment right to make idiots of themselves to a certain extent.
Well, I think what they actually said, the quotes that I've read, I don't know whether it's Trump or Bakhtiari or Kennedy or whatever. It said that you should. This is a conversation you need to have with your physician. And the only time they're not even talking about Tylenol for pain management, they're talking about Tylenol for fever management. So you really, I mean, just kind of when you're pregnant on the pain, you suck it up because there isn't really anything that you could take that'll manage pain associated with some of the conditions of pregnancy that it hasn't already been proven to damage your child. And the question is whether Tylenol does. And I think every place in the world says there's a trade-off. If you're running a little fever, put up with it. But if you start running any kind of serious fever, you need to do something about it. Talk to your doctor about whether Tylenol's the choice for you. So it's for fever control, because we all know that running high fevers when you're pregnant can have not only bad effects on you, but bad effects on your unborn child. So again, hopefully nobody's saying this is what you should do. It should always be confer with your physician. There are risks with every drug you take during pregnancy, and you should take as few as possible. And if you feel you need something, confer with your doctor and see what he or she says. It's that simple right there.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I don't trust this group any more than I trust the group who told us Tylenol was safe, because we know these things in certain doses and for certain people aren't safe, right? They're not perfectly safe. Nothing, as John pointed out, is perfectly safe, right? And so you want to be careful on what you do and do not take, especially during pregnancy. So I understand being skeptical of the information you're getting from the current administration. I completely understand that. But at the same time, you can't. The initial studies about this started 15 years ago about ADHD and Tylenol in pregnant women. This is not a new discussion. It's just all of a sudden, because of Trump, it's become a new discussion. So I don't know. It's the reaction. Like many things these days, I'm amazed by the reaction, not necessarily the information itself. Like, I'm not amazed by what Trump has said. I'm amazed by how far the reaction is, right? It's just completely disconnected from some semblance of reality. And that's kind of all I've got on that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Have we beat that one to death? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, let's go on. We got another one. James Comey has been charged with essentially lying to Congress, right? Now, I wish everybody who lied to Congress would get charged, but that's a whole different discussion. So what do you guys think? This, in a sense, you could argue that Democrats started this lawfare nonsense, and this is going to run its course until the country gets tired of it. That's kind of my.
I mean, there's the whole thing about everybody is a felon, three felonies a day. There are so many felonies out there that you cannot avoid committing a felony even if you try. And that might be what this, that might encompass what's going on here. But I don't know. I don't think so. I think that he knew specifically that he was in fact feeding Russia hoax or misinformation or whatever it was to the media, and that he denied it to Congress. He said he wasn't doing that when in fact he was. I think that's fairly slam dunk case material, and as such, I can't think of a better guy to get prosecuted than James Comey.
Well, I'd like to see him get prosecuted for the major crimes. Not the, I think lying to Congress, if there was a law against Congress lying to us, that'd be a great thing. But there isn't one. They get to lie to us. We don't get to lie to them. And in this case, he released information that the bigger crime is that he helped create the specious information and then released it as if it was factual. And we have, the even bigger crime is that you have the CIA and the FBI and some of these other letter agencies doing whatever they want, and there's no recourse. They're a shadow government, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I'd say just prosecute them. Best thing to do would be to eliminate them and start over. Because with the CIA, let me see, they failed to figure out what was going on with the 9/11 thing because they didn't cooperate with the FBI, who had information, and if they were to share it, they could have probably stopped it. They had no idea that the Soviet Union was coming apart at the seams. I mean, major stuff. And they employ millions of people and spend untold, literally, we don't know how much to spend, billions of dollars. And their job is to know this stuff. They don't know anything. Any of the major things that have happened in the world that have been dangerous in the last 30 years, they haven't had a clue about. And so I think you need to get rid of them and then start with a minimal effort. And their first rule should be you don't get to screw around with other countries' elections, and you especially don't get to screw around with ours, and then start from there and see how much of this quote unquote intelligence we really need. And this is just the start. Let's indict a whole bunch of people in the FBI. I mean, they just lied to us about there being no FBI agencies in the crowds on October 7th, and it turns out there was 256 of them. I want to see video. So let's go for it. Go after them.
Yeah, well, since John brought it up, go ahead.
That's not necessarily tit for tat on the part of Trump. That's although I guess you could say that it is, but it's legitimate tit for tat, I think.
Yeah. No, I think just because, they say what he's doing is lawfare. Well, in the case of what was done to him, it's just specious crimes made up. Every single thing. The judge that said that Mira Delago is worth $8 million when everybody valued it at $250 million. Basically every single case against him was lawfare. Yeah, he's not an honest guy. Everybody knows he's a liar and a lunatic, but that was flat out lawfare. When you bring to light somebody in positions of power in the deep state that's, used their power to mess around with elections, try to prevent one person from getting elected and support another one, that's a flat out felony. That's against the law. There's laws on the books that said you need to go to prison for that. Let's send these people to prison, and then they'll stop doing it. If enough of them are in prison, they'll stop doing it.
Well,
on both sides.
That's some wishful thinking there, John. That they'll stop. They always think they can get away with it, right? Criminals don't stop.
Yeah, but if you put 1 out of 100 of the crooks in prison, then they're going to be a little more careful. That's
they'll be more careful, and you'll have less crooks on the street, right? That's if nothing else, you'll have one less crook on the thing. But you brought up the FBI had 275 plainclothes agents on the January 6th crowd. So here's the question. There's a lot of people saying, well, they're just doing their job. Okay, but if you were that prepared to have 275 plainclothes agents in the crowd, why didn't you have the security more prepared for the event that you clearly thought was going to happen? So none of these things are adding up. This is just a string of lies after lies and covering up. It's become insane. It's almost hard to follow now, right?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the riot on January 6th, and we'll never get to the bottom of it. They deleted 17 hours of video. The video, of course, that showed whoever opened the door to let the people in. the video that probably showed some of these FBI agents fomenting rebellion. This has the I'm a big fan of false flag or black flag conspiracies because I put them in my books all the time, and they're unmanageable. You put people in and you don't hold them accountable, and this kind of stuff happens. I'm willing to bet that some of the people that pushed that crowd over the edge to invade the Capitol, part of the crowd, a very small part of it, were FBI agents, and it's a shame that we won't ever prove that. I don't think, because a lot of the evidence has been destroyed. It's gone.
John, yeah, what do you think, Richard?
Yeah, I think that the whole idea of a demonstration about the whole who won the election, it's just another demonstration. Unless you have unless you're plotting on one side, and this would be the Democratic side, to make it look like this demonstration is a lot more violent than it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you take a look at the January 6th demonstrations and compare it to the race riots that we had earlier in that year, there's really no comparison. But the narrative is that, wow, look at all these right-wing crazies, and and there were some, but it was managed, I think, by Nancy Pelosi and crew very adroitly, and unfortunately, we live with those results.
Yeah, it was there was clearly mismanagement, and at that point, at that level, it has to be deliberate, right? It's deliberate mismanagement. We accidentally, on purpose, forgot to prepare for this thing that everybody knew was coming.
Yeah, they turned down. Trump, to his credit, said, that there's a lot more people than he expected, and they're pissed. Would you like some National Guard? And Nancy Pelosi said no. And, it came out afterwards that offer was made, and that the chief of police, I guess, for DC was told, you don't get to get National Guard. Deal with it yourself, buddy. So on and on and on. The stories propagate and the lies continue, and then the filth surges. So
all right, so we got 2 stories left, John. I know you want to get to the last one, so so let's get to this next one real quick. Apple's complaining the EU's digital rules are delaying new features, which it's not like I care about Apple, but B, yes, I would guarantee you that they are delaying new features, right? Because you got to fit everything into this scheme that they've created. Everything has to be USB-C. And that when you overregulate an industry, you prevent evolution, right? That's what happens.
If you regulate an industry at all, you do. And, you regulate some industries out of existence and others in, like we try to do with fossil fuels here. But the case with Apple's is horribly egregious, because now they're deciding that people should be able to repair their own electronic devices in Europe. And they're, making rules about digital content and access and charging and all the rest of that. Who in the hell gave a bunch of socialists in the European Union the right to dictate anything? I don't remember telling them that they could tell an American company what to do. And if I was Apple, I'd tell them to kiss my ass. Be that simple. Yeah. If you don't like the product,
in which case, Apple is not doing business in the EU, which is the problem with that kind of regulation.
This
is very similar to the whole thing about regulation by the FCC. You can get into the weeds and regulate the minutia, but what you're really doing is you are attempting, and probably successfully, making it possible for regulators to control the output of whatever it is that the media is trying to say. In this case, whatever gets said on an AirPod. If you can't have the speaker, it's kind of hard to get your message out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts with handshake technology, and it ends with the control. And we know Europe is going down that road of trying to control what people hear and say. It's gone far farther than we have here. All right, John, we've got 2 minutes or so left, so I'm going to let you get this next one. The Mojave Desert Solar Plant, once hailed as a marvel by some people, is closing. Essentially, it's just going to be a relic. They're going to convert a lot of it to normal solar panels, thing, right? This is one of these failed projects. One of these big government failed projects.
It's not only the project's not necessarily a failure. If they got out of the way and let people in private industry develop this kind of technology, they never would have put the fighting mirrors up, or whatever they call it. That's basically a mirrors aimed at stations to, I think, generate steam to generate electricity, which is a great idea. And probably kills fewer birds, but the problem is it's inefficient. And what they're going to replace it with is something else that's also inefficient, that wouldn't be there if it wasn't for tax write-offs to support it, and government money to support it, most of which has gone into the hands of friends who are involved in the projects and regulation. And then it's also halted. The California is sitting on huge capacity of gas and shale and huge oil capacity, and we've prevented that from being extracted. We've made it tremendously expensive to own and drive a car in this state, and every single highway project's a boondoggle. So it's just on and on and on. Anytime California steps up to do something that'll save the environment and make things better, you can guarantee that that's not the case. The environment is going to get worse.
It makes things better for a select group of contractors, and that's about the only people that benefit from
cronies,
high-speed rail, or the solar plant, or whatever it is. When the government gets in and tries to nudge markets in a certain direction, what they're really doing is they're taking the decision away from ultimate consumers and saying bureaucrats should have the decision as to what people buy, whether it's solar energy or shale energy or whatever.
And then their friends get wealthy, and those friends magically somehow always give big donations to the Democratic Party.
We are out of time, guys.
There's no. The Republicans do it too.
Yeah. This is a sign of bureaucracy. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for watching. Have a good week, and please remember to love everybody.